What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3, Raw and Relentless with Bo DePaoli. So, this week's episode, I wanted to discuss why I wanted to invest into commercial real estate. So, this actually stems from when I was a wee young lad. I could remember when I was a kid, we used to have in our kitchen, we had this little 13-inch black and white TV that I would always watch my Saturday morning cartoons on, right? And it was black and white because not that we couldn't afford color, it just served its purpose. So my parents never really went out and got a color TV. So, anyways, I would always sit at the corner in the kitchen where this TV was, and I'd lean up against the counter and I'd sit there and I'd eat my cereal, right? And so I can remember one Saturday, my dad was leaned up on the other side eating his cereal with me, and mine was always honeycombs, and his would always frosted mini wheats. He could not get enough of frosted mini wheats. So we sit there and watch the Saturday morning cartoons. And I can remember we got in this conversation about jobs and careers and this and this and that. And somehow I brought up my uncle, who at the time owned some apartment buildings, apartment communities. And I didn't fully understand how you would make money with an apartment building. So I vividly remember he went and grabbed a yellow post-it, lined post-it pad and a pen and no pencil. My dad would always write in pencil. So he grabbed this pencil and this pad and he broke down exactly how my uncle makes money with commercial real estate. And, he explained, if you got X number of units, paying X number average rent per unit, times that by 12, and then you've got your expenses, and then you've got to go out and get a loan, and this and this and that. So he broke it all the way down from top to bottom: gross revenue, operating expenses, net income. From that net income, that's what you're living off of after you pay your mortgage and this and that. And uh, he went into depreciation. He's like, "No, now the next step is, you get to depreciate this property over so many years." And so he said the IRS allows you to depreciate a commercial property, over X number of years. And so you take your purchase price, you divide it by the number of years that you're allowed to depreciate, and that comes off of your net income. So that reduces your taxable income. And I was like, whoa, this is what I'm talking about, right? I don't got to pay the government all this money that I'm making. And so that is what really started my interest into commercial real estate, particularly multifamily. And plus, I had seen where I think it's six, something like 6 of the 10 most richest people, millionaires, are derived from real estate, or some crazy stat like that. Like most millionaires come from real estate. And then I see how a lot of these guys that live from this passive income and how they live financially free, and they're not stuck in the 9 to 5, or working the shift work, or working this or working that. And that was another thing that really piqued my interest too. Oh my God, I don't got to pay, I can make all this money. I don't got to pay a lot in taxes, and I can be financially free and do the other things that I like to do in life. That was what really appealed me to commercial real estate. And that was actually it was my means to an end with the gyms. The gyms I've always been a gym rat. So I figured, well, I'd buy these gyms and then I'd use the money from these gyms to go out and buy commercial real estate, right? Well, it's not as easy as people think and say. It is, but when you're trying to do it by yourself, it's hard. It's much harder when you try to do things by yourself. When you've got a team, when you've got a group that you can go out and do these things together, that makes things much, much easier. I heard a lot of wealthy people say this, but this one particular gentleman that I know said, would you rather have 20% of something or 0% of nothing? And that's 100% true. A lot of times we try and go out as entrepreneurs and we try and do these things all on our own so that we can keep 100% of the pot. But in the end, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, is that really worth it? Or if you're even getting a paycheck, because there's a lot of guys that don't even get a paycheck. I know the first 2 years that I owned the gym, I didn't collect a paycheck at all. I was too busy trying to revamp the gym and get it back to operating to what it was prior. And so, I lived off of savings. I was even collecting unemployment at one point. So, I did whatever I had to do to try and make it work. And so, moral of the story is it's much easier to try and do these big things in life if you've got a good group surrounding you, whether it's investors, whether it's other people, like-minded people that are willing to grow and build a business with you. I mean, look at the guys at Google, right? It's guys, right? It was a few guys that were college roommates that built Google and then were smart and just kept building a team and building a team and building a team. So, that's kind of the stuff that if you want to get to the big leagues, you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. You're only going to get so far by yourself before you're going to need help. And so that's one thing of this podcast is I'm hoping that it'll help you realize that. And I'm hoping that it will, kind of spark some interest in not trying to do this all by yourself. So that being said, what I wanted to do is kind of run through an exercise and show you a very, very basic underwriting that you could do if you're looking at some commercial property to understand how the returns work, to understand how depreciation works, and to understand how sweat equity works when you're looking at a deal. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like on this fancy schmancy Excel model that I built. Okay, so this is a very, 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 very basic commercial real estate calculator. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of breaking down exactly what it looks like from purchase price all the way through to your return on investment and whatnot. So what I'm saying here is if we buy a property for $1 million, okay, we need to put 25% down, which means we need to come up with $250,000, right? Let's say our average rent is $1,000 a unit and it's a 12 unit. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 1,000 times 12 times 12, right? $1,000 per unit, 12 units, 12 months. That's $144,000 a year in gross revenue. Now, typically, generally speaking, your operating expenses on a multifamily property are going to be somewhere between 45 to 55% of your gross revenue. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking a general number of 50% here. So that means that this property is going to cost about $72,000 a year to operate. So that means your NOI is $72,000. Okay. So that means that you are going to net $72,000 a year. Now, you have some debt service in there, right? You got a mortgage that you're going to be paying for to buy this property. So let's insert that in here right below the NOI so we can see what the cash flow looks like. So we're going to say debt service. So we're going to plug in a formula here. And this should give us everything we need. Okay, so what we're saying here is your debt service is going to be roughly $32,000 a year. So that means that your annual cash flow, let's add that in, is your NOI less your debt service. So you're going to be making, let's call it $40,000 a year net in the end. Okay? That's after expenses, that's after your mortgage. That's passive income, right? Passive meaning you don't really have to do a lot. Just manage the tenants when you need to. It's not like you're running a brick and mortar store where you've got customers coming in, day out, all the time. So now your return on investment is your down payment over your cash flow. So that's a 16% return on investment annually, which is really good, right? I mean, you figure the average stock market return, I think, is somewhere between 6 to 8%. The S&P 500 is an average return. I think over the last 50 years, it averages out to about 9 to 10%. So 16% return on investment on that $250,000 investment. Now you have to add depreciation into that as well. So what is depreciation? So the government comes in and says, okay, you bought this property, Mr. Real Estate Investor. We're going to allow you to depreciate that property over X amount of years. And what that does is the depreciation is reduces the adjusted gross income of that property. So if we bought the property for $1 million, I believe, check with your accountant, but I believe you're allowed to depreciate it roughly over 27 and a half years. So that's $36,000 and some change per year that you're depreciating. So now we've got to take that away from your cash flow, right? So you're taking that away from your cash flow, and your taxable revenue is $3,300 a year. You're making almost 40, but you're only being taxed on 3,300. I mean, that's amazing, right? That just shows you the power of real estate. And most people don't understand this, right? So you're netting roughly $40,000 a year. So that's an extra. Let's take that by 12. So that's an extra $3,300 a month, right? That's an extra $3,300 a month. Now you're going to ask, well, where am I going to come up with $250,000? Well, a lot of places. If you've got equity in your home, you could, use the equity in your home to go after deals like this. And I'm not saying you got to start at 12. Maybe you start at 4. Maybe you start at 8 units. You could start small. But if you've got the resume and you've got the experience behind managing deals, you can go after bigger deals, and you can go out and you can raise this money from high net worth individuals, from family offices, from institutional investors. You can go out and raise this $250,000 to go after these deals. So what that means is you're going to go out and you're going to market yourself and say, hey, Mr. High Net Worth Investor, I've got this deal. I'll manage it for you. I'll close the deal. You don't have to lift your finger on this deal. I'm going to do everything for you, and I'm going to give you a return on your money. So let's just say you've got one person that's going to cut a check for $250,000. That means that they're going to want to see an X% return on their investment, right? And so typically what you're going to see in the marketplace, if you're going out and you're raising capital for deals like this, is a experienced investor or an investor that understands how these type of investments work. They're going to want a pref on their money. So what's a pref? A pref is a preferred rate of return. And typically you're going to see a pref of around 6 to 8%. So that means that on that $250,000, they're going to want to see at least a 6 to 8% annual return on their investment. Well, this deal is showing a 16% return. So even if you gave them half, you're still walking away with 8% return on zero money that you had to invest. You had to put no money up. You're doing all of the heavy lifting for this investor, right? You're doing the managing the property, you're finding the tenants, you're doing all the maintenance, you're doing all the repairs, you're doing whatever it takes to keep this property occupied and profitable. And so what they're going to do then is they're going to give you the money. You're going to give them that pref. You're going to give them that return on their money. And then what you're also going to give them is you're going to give them a split on the deal. So that means that you might be the minority in the deal, but when you go to exit the deal, that split might flip. I'm just giving you examples. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat here. But what that means is that you are now going to, let's say 5 years down the line. Okay, let's run this down. Let me delete this here. Let's say 5 years later, we're going to say 5 years later. Let's say 5 years later, we are now getting, let's say it's, we get 3% rent bumps per year over 5 years. So that's 15% over the 5 years that you're going to raise rents. Okay. And that compounds, right? So year one, 3% on $1,000 is $30. So that means in year one, you're $1,030 for your rent. Now it's another 3% on 1,030. It just keeps going, right? Year over year over year, it compounds. So we're going to keep it very simple. Let's say at the end of year 5, your rents are now, I don't know, let's just say $1,300. Okay. So we're going to work this backwards. Got 12 units. So that means your gross revenue is $187,000 to $200. And now let's say you tightened up expenses a little bit. So when you bought the property, you were doing a 50% expense ratio. Let's say now you're doing 45% expense ratio, because this is now going to increase your NOI, right? You've increased your rent, you've increased your gross income, and then you've cut expenses. So now that gives you a larger NOI. So we're going to take your gross revenue times 0.45. So that means you're doing $84,000 a year in expenses. So that means that your NOI is almost $103,000 a year, right? Debt service is going to stay the same. So that means that you're now cash flowing $70,000, almost $71,000 a year, right? Now, let's talk about cap rate. Cap rate is what you pay for that property if you paid cash. So what that means is if I went out and I bought this property for $1 million, I paid cash, and my NOI is $72,000. That means that's a 7.2% return if I went and I paid cash, 100% cash for that property. But we're not paying cash. We're putting debt on the property, right? We're going to go out and we're going to get a loan to go get this property, because that increases when you leverage debt like that. That's going to increase your rate of return over the 5-year hold period, or however long your hold period is. So, but what the valuation is let's say 5 years from now, deals in this area are now going for, let's say a 6.5 cap. Let's say the area is improved, or you've improved the property, or overall the property is done well, and its other properties in that area have done well. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your NOI, okay, and you're going to divide that by 6.5%. So that property is now worth $1.584 million. Okay. So you have almost $600,000 of equity built into this property over 5 years. That's on top of the cash flow that you've been getting, right? You've been generating $40,000 a year to start. By year 5, you're generating $70,000 a year in cash flow, right? So let's just say you average that out. Let's say you're averaging $55,000 a year in cash flow over 5 years. That's $250,000 of cash flow that you've earned over a 5-year period. Plus, you've increased the valuation almost $600,000. So that's $1 million that you have actually earned over 5 years through passive income. So what that means is that when you go to exit this property 5 years later, you're now going to sell the property, right? So you're going to make less what you owe, which is the $750,000. Okay. So you're going to have $834,000 coming to you at closing that you're going to have to split with the investor. Okay. Plus your average cash flow, which we said was $55,000, times the 5 years, that's another $275,000. So that means that in the 5-year period, you have generated $1.1 million in revenue for yourself and your investor that you can use to then just recycle and do the whole thing all over again. Or what a lot of people do is they'll leave the money in the property, but they know that they've increased the value of that property. They've increased the potential value of that property, that they can go out and re-leverage the property, borrow against the property tax-free, and go out and buy more deals. So this cost us $250,000 to go and get into this deal. Well, let's say by year 2 or 3, we have enough equity in the property that, let's say, we can extract another $250,000 out of the property. The property's still going to cash flow, right? Because we've been increasing rents, we've reduced expenses. Property's still going to cash flow. Now you're going to take that another 250 out of your current property and go buy another property. And then you're going to go do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And then if you compound that with using other people's money, OPM, investors' money, you use some OPM and you go out and start buying other deals like this and just recirculating this over and over and over and over. In a 10-year period, if you play your cards right and you're smart with your investments and you don't go out and just take all your cash flow that you're earning and you go out and try and buy an expensive home or a bunch of expensive cars, you could generate yourself millions of dollars in passive income every year within 10 years. You could retire within 10 years if you do this right. You have to hustle. You have to play your cards right. You got to put right tenants in the building. You've got to manage the property effectively. You've got to keep your expenses in line. But this is how it's done, ladies and gentlemen. This is how you earn passive income. This is how you become millionaires. This is how you reduce your taxable income. Because again, every property you're buying, you're depreciating that property, right? You're taking that depreciation and you're reducing your adjusted gross income. So the government's not going to be they can't take as much taxable money from you because you're using that depreciation to improve the property, right? You're reinvesting into the property. That's key. Don't think that you could just go buy a property and not do anything with it and do these kind of returns. A lot of times you're going to have to put money into the property, okay? Whether that's upgrading some units, right? Maybe units have carpet everywhere and now the trend is it's hardwood floors, some type of hard laminate floor everywhere. Or maybe you need to upgrade appliances or just some exterior upgrades to make the curb appeal nicer so you attract some better quality tenants. All of these things matter when you're buying investment properties like this. So this is what we do at D3 Capital. We go out and we try and find deals like this. We raise the money and we look for deals like this. And this type of deal, we would be very interested in this kind of deal. It's a smaller deal. It's smaller than what we typically would look at. But at the same time, we're looking for good investments. We're looking for deals that cash flow like this. And so we like to, this is a very, very, very brief underwriting. We have a much more in-depth underwriting model that one day I'm going to do a webinar on. But these are the type of deals that we will go after. And this is what it takes to get to a more financially free life that a lot of people look for. Okay. So my recommendation, if you want to learn more, click the link in the bio. You can read some of my blogs. You can get a hold of me and we can chat about how this type of scenario can be played out and how you can invest in deals like this with us and start taking down some larger deals, right? Maybe you don't want to start with the 12 unit. You want to look at those 100 units, the 200 units. Those are the kind of deals that we're looking at. And so we're always looking for other investors. We're always looking for other players that are looking to bring more value to their life through some passive income. So that being said, I appreciate you guys' time today and looking forward to some future educational podcasts to show you what else is out there in the business and real estate and fitness world. All right, everybody, have a good day.